Following up a difficult, frustrating 1-1 draw with Wales in the World Cup opener, the USA now face England in what's proving to be one of the most anticipated matchups of this World Cup group stage. So let's jump right in, talk about that game on Friday. While you're here, follow me on Twitter for more frequent coverage and TikTok as well. We're putting up multiple videos every day throughout the World Cup. But yeah, US-England, huge game. Let's jump right into it. Going to some historical background, this is actually the third all-time meeting between the United States and England in the FIFA World Cup. I've actually got all three jerseys from the three meetings behind me. Here's the first, 1950. Sure, we know about it. USA 1, England 0. With Saudi Arabia beating Argentina earlier this week, I've seen a lot of discussion about that being the biggest World Cup upset of all time. At least the Saudi team are professionals. At least they're, actual professional soccer players. The U.S. team that beat England in 1950 was made up of semi-pros, amateurs, and, it beat the best team in the world, England, a team of professionals. We all know about it, 1-0 off of a Joe Gaetjens goal. And the U.S. eventually went out in the group stage, but still getting that ridiculous upset win over England. Biggest upset in World Cup history. 2010, a bit more recent. I'm sure the majority of the people watching this should be able to remember it. It was 2010. USA in South Africa drew England 1-1. Really bad start to the game for the U.S. Went behind within 4 minutes to Steven Gerrard. And then it did kind of take a moment of luck to get back into the game. Clint Dempsey's shot kind of bending and curving as those 2010 World Cup Jabulani balls did. Robert Green spills at 1-1. And really, I think in the second half, the U.S. did have chances to win it. Couldn't get that winning goal. Settled for a 1-1 draw, which the New York Post said felt like a win. But at the end of the day, the U.S. has never lost to England in the World Cup. And that brings us to 2022. And the U.S. will be wearing this blue jersey on Friday, Black Friday, in what is expected to be the most viewed soccer match, potentially, in American history. How can the U.S. approach this game to have a chance against a high-flying England team right now? England are coming off of a really, really big win in their first game of the group stage. They defeated Iran 6-2 with a ridiculous haul of goals, with Bukayo Saka scoring 2, Jude Bellingham, who I believe is probably their best player and most talented player without a doubt. He's a real star, one of my favorite players who's not from the United States. He scored an incredible header. Mason Mount playing really well. Harry Kane getting 2 assists. Jack Grealish getting on the score sheet. I mean, this is a really, really good England team that they weren't in the best form leading up to the tournament, but they just went out and put 6 goals past Iran, who had the best defense in all of Asian qualifying. Clearly, they've got some star power, and they were able to get a result against what we thought going into the tournament was a pretty solid Iranian team. While they do have all this attacking star power, not just those who started against Iran, namely Raheem Sterling on the left, Bukayo Saka on the right, and Harry Kane up top, they've got so much depth in their attack that it's kind of ridiculous. Phil Foden coming off the bench. Scary, scary player. Of course, you've got Jack Grealish, who did get on the score sheet. You've got Marcus Rashford coming off the bench. He also scored a goal against Iran. You've got Callum Wilson as another striking option. But what they lack in the attack kind of is made up for in the defense. The center back pairing is not the strongest, and we'll have to wait and see how the U.S. can beat this England team. But first, before we do that, let's talk about how the U.S. should and maybe will line up for this game against England to best combat their opponents. This right here is what I'm projecting the lineup for the England game is going to be for the United States of America. It's almost the same as the previous match. I just made 2 changes. You probably would be able to guess what they are. So Matt Turner in goal, obviously. Tim Ream and Walker Zimmerman as the center back pairing. I think Tim Ream was really, really good in the first half. He did struggle a little bit in the second half when he was under a lot more pressure and going up against the 6'5" Kiefer Moore from Wales. But the alternatives really aren't any better. England are not the team that's going to be whipping in crosses in the air necessarily. So I'm fine with Tim Ream. He also does have that familiarity playing in the Premier League, playing against these guys every single week as the captain of Fulham. Walker Zimmerman, I thought he had a good first half. I thought for the most part he had a pretty good game. He did cost us the equalizer though. Ultimately, that was a mistake he made, which cost the U.S. the 3 points. It happens. I don't think there's any reason he should be dropped because of it, but mistakes happen. It's a shame, but we have to move on. And Walker Zimmerman is still better than any alternatives. Anthony Robinson will start at left back, obviously. Sergiño Dest could start at right back, but I think he's going to go for DeAndre Yedlin. Again, not what my choice would be, and we'll come back to that in a moment, but I think he'll go with DeAndre Yedlin. Sergiño Dest is not at 100% fitness. He couldn't play 90 minutes. He only played, I believe, about 65, 70 minutes against Wales. He is on a yellow card as well. He really didn't have the best performance against the Welsh. I thought he was one of our worst performers on the field in the first half. So I wouldn't be surprised if he does go for one of the other right backs, because again, there are 4 right backs on the roster. I think he'll go for DeAndre Yedlin, who has World Cup experience. Again, not what I would do. Moving on to the midfield. I think the best way to approach the England game is to match their 4-3-3 shape in the midfield. So England plays a pairing of typically Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham. That's what they did against Iran in the first game. At the base of the midfield with Mason Mount as the number 10 in front. I think we need to match that shape in the middle of the park, assuming they do play that again. So for me, that means you have to drop Weston McKennie. So that means Tyler Adams is the 6, Musa kind of alongside him as the 8, helping him in the build-out. Like I've mentioned numerous times before, kind of in a similar role to what Mark Roca does for Leeds United, with Tyler Adams doing the defensive responsibilities and Musa being more in control of possessing the ball and pushing it forward. Weston McKennie does get dropped from this lineup. This is not purely a tactical decision. I don't think he had the best game against Wales. Again, he is also on a yellow card. Like I said, he doesn't really fit this 4-2-3-1-ish shape as well. There's not really a role for him here that perfectly fits him. But also, I just don't think he looked 100% against Wales. Prior to that, he hadn't played a game since October 29th, so it was his first game in 3 weeks. And again, he wasn't able to go 90 minutes. He came off, I believe, at 66. I believe he was the first sub. After a decent start to the game, he did really get really sloppy for the second half of the time he was on the field, and Brendan Aronson came in as the first sub. I think Brendan Aronson will start this game. Greg Berhalter has constantly preached familiarity with the opponent. It's why he brought Shaq Moore in against Panama, because there was a Panamanian attacker that Shaq Moore had recently played against. Honestly, I think it's part of the reason why he started Tim Ream against Wales. So, I think he's going to go for Brendan Aronson, who of course plays for Leeds United, over Gio Reyna, Luca De La Torre, Kellen Acosta, whoever else could play that position. But yeah, I think it'll be Aronson. Didn't have the best game against Wales coming off the bench, but never really found his footing in the game, never got into the rhythm of the game. But if he starts, maybe that'll be a different story. He's a really good defense. He has a good defensive work rate as an attacker, so he can help win the ball back high up the field. If we are going to win this game, well, if we're going to get anything out of this game, and if we're going to get a goal, we're going to have to do it in transition. We're not going to do anything in the build-up. So Brendan Aronson is a transition merchant. He'll be really good for that. So I could definitely see him starting as the 10. I think the front 3, I would be shocked if it changed, because Pulisic, Sargent, and Weah all had good games, and the 3 of them linked up. They combined for the goal. Tim Weah in the first half was our best player. Really, really dangerous. Not only did he score the goal, of course, with a really nice finish past Hennessy, but he also did have a couple other chances. One in particular where he was going down the right. He had an excellent touch in the air, flicked it across the box almost caused an own goal, and then created another chance for Josh Sargent in the box. Josh Sargent there immediately after came really close. He hit the post with a header. Christian Pulisic, his set pieces were really poor, and I'd hope Brenden Aaronson or Gio Reyna would be taking them from now on. But other than that, I think he was relatively effective. He drew a lot of fouls, got the assist on the goal, and Josh Sargent as well had the pass before the assist. So I think the front three stays the same. I would be disappointed if Jesus Ferreira was put in up top. And like I've mentioned before, I think it's not crazy if we do MMA, if we keep McKennie in a 4-3-3. If we do that, maybe you can put Tim Weah as the 9. It's not something he's ever played for Berhalter before. But like I said, if we're gonna get anything out of this game, if we're gonna get on the score sheet, it's gonna have to be in transition. And Tim Weah's runs in behind are way better than any of the other strikers, better than Josh Sargent, better than Jesus Ferreira especially, and better than Haji Wright. But yeah, I think Sergiño Dest ignored some runs from Weah several times. I think Pulisic also 1 or 2 times. There were a couple passes he could have made that he didn't make. We just have to be more clinical on those. That's one of the most important things for this team. Real quick, I'm going to show you the 2 changes that I would make from this lineup right here. What's my preferred lineup? So mine only has 2 changes. I prefer Gio Reyna as the 10. There's questions of his fitness. He didn't play a single minute against Wales, which if that's for tactical reasons, that is completely inexplicable and inexcusable. I'm sure there must surely be an injury. I mean, from what I've heard, he's 100% healthy, 100% fit, and ready to go. But Berhalter is insistent that he has some sort of tightness, some sort of hamstring issue. So it's kind of a weird situation. I hope he gets to start. When he's playing, he's the best player on this team. When he's playing well, he's got the highest ceiling, most potential, most talent. So you'd hope he gets to start against England in the middle of the park, because you're not taking out Weah, and I don't think you're going to take out Pulisic. I also put Joe Scally in at right back, just because, like I said, I don't think Sergiño Dest is going to start this one, not only because the reasons I mentioned before, but also throughout qualifying, throughout the 3-game windows, Dest never started all 3 games. In September, he played the first 2, then didn't play the third. In October, he played the first and the third and didn't even get a minute in the second game. And then in January, he started the first 2 games and then didn't play at all in the third one. So, especially given that he's been dealing with some injury issues, I don't think Dest is going to play all 3 games in the group stage. And he didn't look too good in the first game, so I went for Joe Scally. I don't think Berhalter will do that. Personally, I don't think Yedlin's looking at his best right now. He didn't have the best game against Wales. Hasn't been playing a lot lately because the MLS season's long over. So maybe I'd even prefer Shaq Moore to start this game in particular, because he is a better one-on-one defender, and when you're going up against Saka, Foden, Sterling, you want to have Shaq Moore. But it could go either way. I would go Scally. Hopefully he does that, and I'm surprised, but yeah, whatever. There's one more tactical note I want to mention about the U.S. team before we move on to a quick overview of the England team and how they're going to play. So, Christian Pulisic over here had the tendency against Wales, as he has for quite a while for the men's national team, to really drift inside and not really leave the half spaces. He was never on the wing, really. He was always somewhere in the middle. He was drifting inside a lot. Now, that poses a problem if we do have Gio Reyna as the 10, because he has a tendency to do the same thing. So I think things would get a little bit clogged up. So if we do play a 4-2-3-1, Pulisic would have to stay high and wide. The other issue is that in the game against Wales, we weren't able to get the best out of Yunus Musah, which is another reason why I want to play a shape like this that's a bit more disciplined in the attack. Yunus Musah, naturally you want him in the middle of the park, you want him driving play forward. He wasn't able to do that. He was barely able to get on the ball in any sort of attacking position, because Pulisic was drifting so far to the middle of the field that Anthony Robinson, the left back, needed to go up high to maintain width, to keep that width out there, right? So when we were building out, Ream shifts over a little bit, Zimmerman shifts over. Dest was basically playing as a third center back. He was basically playing as a right center back. In the build out, it was a 3-4-3. But because Robinson was so high, that left a gap in his spot. So Musa, who, again, we want to get on the ball as much as possible, driving the play forward, kind of had to cover and fill over at left back. So when we were attacking, it often felt like Musa was basically covering at left back, and he wasn't getting involved in the attack at all. No, he's not a finisher. He's not going to score the goals for you necessarily. He's not someone you can rely on to do that. But you still want to get him in the attacking third a bit more. And Pulisic just needs to stay high and wide, let Robinson be that cover, and let Gio Reyna or maybe Brendan Aronson be more in those spaces in the middle of the park, connecting the attack, playmaking, and picking the locks. Also, this is, I believe, the first time that Musa has been on the left for the U.S. He's mostly been playing on the right side of the midfield with McKennie on the left, and they flipped against Wales. So I expect we'll see that again, especially given, like I mentioned, Robinson is going to be going high to cover the width for Pulisic, which means that Musa is going to cover over at the left side of the field. But enough about that boring tactical stuff. Let's talk about how England could line up, how to play, and maybe what we can do to stop them, because it's going to be really, really hard to do that. Right, here's the projected lineup for the three Lions. Jordan Pickford in goal. He'll probably start. He did concede 2 goals against Iran, but I'd be shocked if he got dropped. Luke Shaw at left back, Harry Maguire and John Stones as a center back pairing. Kieran Trippier probably will play right back. It's because Kyle Walker is not at full fitness. He's still working his way back. And Trent Alexander-Arnold in a 4 is not something that Gareth Southgate has done very much. He doesn't seem to trust Trent very much, and he is a bit of a liability defensively, especially with Christian Pulisic in behind on the left wing. When you have that center back pairing of Harry Maguire and John Stones, they do have a mistake in them. Don't get me wrong, but they're still better than any center backs we have in this tournament. So while Harry Maguire is often the butt of some jokes, he's still better than any center back we have. And he looked pretty good against Iran. He did get an assist, so don't get me wrong. This back line is pretty good, but they're not perfect. This is a back line, especially if Trent were to play a right back, that I think we can exploit, as long as they don't get any free kicks. The two in the midfield, like I said, probably going to be Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham. Declan Rice, in my opinion, is very overrated. He's still a very good player. Like, he would still play for our national team, don't get me wrong. But it's not like he's this world-class player, right? Jude Bellingham is an elite talent, and he terrifies me, what he can do. So fingers crossed, that Gareth Southgate does make some changes to the midfield, because I think that would benefit us. Like, if he starts Jordan Henderson or Calvin Phillips, that would be ideal. Conor Gallagher, that would be even more ideal. But Jude Bellingham's gonna start. Like, he's probably gonna win Young Player of the tournament, all things considered, if England do go far. So, but as for the attack, it's pick your poison. Like, it could be anyone. Could be Foden, Sterling, Saka, Grealish, Rashford, Mount. Could be anyone. No way to know. And they're all fantastic. They're all incredible attackers. And we watch them all in the Premier League every week, so we know that. It's tough to say. What do we do to stop them? Just play the games of our lives. Like, there's no easy way. There's no blueprint to stopping this English attack. This is the deepest attack probably in the world, along with Brazil. So, there's no perfect solution to it. Harry Kane, he may have been dealing with some injury issues. It sounds like now that he's going to play. I'm assuming he's going to play. He's fantastic in link-up. Walker Zimmerman is going to have to work really hard to shut him down, because if we can silence Kane, we silence the full attack, really, because a lot of their attack go through Kane, even if he's not on the end of it, even if he's not scoring the goals. He got 2 assists against Iran. So he's a fantastic link-up striker, a modern number 9. Very well-rounded player. So it's going to be tough. There's no easy solution to it. England are one of the best teams in the world. England are the best team the U.S. have played since... I mean, Brazil in 2018 had Neymar. France, maybe France in 2018 with their World Cup squad. So this is the most difficult game of the Berhalter era by far. We'll just have to see if they can dig deep. And honestly, the way the U.S. can win this game is to not let the game get into a flow. Don't let there be any rhythm. If it's a street fight, that's fantastic. That's exactly what the U.S. want. Because England are technically a far, far better and more talented team than the United States. I don't think the U.S. is going to win this game, but if they are to get anything out of it, they're going to have to just not let the game get into a rhythm, disrupt it at all costs, and fight for every ball, every 50-50. Take yellows if you have to, because at the end of the day, even if the U.S. don't get a point out of this, even if the U.S. do lose, it's essential with the way that this group is right now to not get blown out. If it's a 1-0 loss, it's bad. It's not the end of the world. And things do depend on the Wales-Iran game as well. And by the way, an Iran win would be ideal because it keeps the next round in our hands for the most part. A draw would be fine. But just don't get blown out and you have a chance going to the next round. If the U.S. loses this game 4-0, I think there's no chance the U.S. advance. So, yeah. But yeah, we'll give some final thoughts before we just wrap it up. So, often I give score predictions. I don't do score predictions for World Cup matches, so I'm not going to give you one. But it's going to be really hard. It could be brutal. I'm going to be honest with you. This is going to be a really hard game. And I mean, in 2010, you could have said the same thing. That was one of the best England teams ever, and we tied them 1-1. A stroke of luck. Sometimes that's all you need. But will we get that this time around? Tough to say. But hopefully they can unlock the spirit of 1950 and somehow manage to win this game. Maybe a Tim Weah moment of magic once again because he is phenomenal. Maybe a Gio Reyna moment of magic. He is raring to go after not getting a single minute against Wales in the opener. He is ready to go. But let me know what your thoughts are. Who would you start against England? How can we get anything from this game? But yeah, I'll talk to you guys later. Yeah, don't forget to follow me on Twitter and TikTok. And yeah, we'll see you.